Dana White's Contender Series.
Tuesday night in Las Vegas, Nevada, and around this time of the year, that can only mean one thing. It is time for Dana White's Contender Series. We are inside the brand new UFC Apex facility. My name is John Morgan. Dan Tom with me again this week. It is week 2 of the 3rd season inside this brand new facility. And listen, week 1 didn't come without some controversy, right? I mean, Brandon Loughnane, the big story coming out of that. Did he deserve it? Did he not deserve it? I got to be honest. If it was John Morgan's Contender Series, I probably would have given him the contract. But, Dana White said, listen, I'm setting the tone here. We're looking for killers. We're not looking for anybody to shoot takedowns at the end of it. It's not the only way to get into the UFC. So for that reason, I wasn't completely outraged by the decision. But what did you think about the controversy that surrounded our first event?
I like how you frame that, because you're right. If it was the Dan Tom Contender Series, I would have had him as well. And of course, I spelt that out in my Grading the Winners column, which you could find always the day after, over posted at MMAJunkie.com, where I kind of wax about these fights. And yeah, I'm on the same page with you, John. Where he was my number 1 pick, because I know you shouldn't necessarily factor things like experience and all the on-paper facets, if you will. I do, admittedly. That being said, in Dana White's defense and the show's defense, I stated in my article, this was not a surprise if you've been following the series.
Right.
To be fair, both Dana White and the format itself expresses this and has shown that through the decisions they've made. So if you've been a long-time follower, I don't think you should be that surprised. And that doesn't mean you have to agree. That's completely up to you. But as far as being surprised, I feel it's fair to the format.
Yeah, I think that people need to be aware of it. You got to be going for a finish at all times. You may not get the finish, but you got to be going for the finish at all time. And that's what we saw out of the fighters that did get contracts. I'll tell you the other thing, too. It wasn't the greatest night of fights that we've had on this series, but I think there was a different feel last time. I feel like there was a lot of nerves. We were brand new inside this building. I don't think anybody knew what to expect. It was a little bit wild, and I think this time around, I think we'll have something a little bit different this week. I just feel a different buzz, a different energy in the air.
Well, you know what they say, it's always the sophomore UFC performance where you'll see a fighter really kind of come into action. Now, if we're looking at it from a production standpoint, like you just mentioned, I would agree it's got that going for us. And let's be honest, even the controversy, even if you were one of the more harsher critics of it, are you telling me those people aren't tuning in with some extra vested interest this week to see how that controversy will play, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we sprinkle into these fights, how that could, last week can influence this week.
No such thing as bad PR, right? As long as you're talking about it. Look, we got a little bit of controversy this week, or not controversy necessarily, but something kind of interesting. Our first fight of the night is going to be Miguel Basil versus Victor Reyna. Now, this was actually supposed to be our featured fight. They don't really call it a main event. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing here, but it was supposed to be the featured fight. That's now going to go to Alton Cunningham and Tony Johnson. We'll talk about that fight a little bit later as we kind of build up this card. But Victor Reyna came in as a last-second replacement. I say last second. He had about scheduled. I am told that he was trying to cut 30 pounds in a little less than 2 weeks, and it just didn't happen for him. So that fight is now going to be the first fight of the night. I'm really intrigued by this fight, Dan, because I wonder what these guys are fighting for, right? I mean, for Victor Reyna to come in and miss weight by that much. Now, listen, you come in on short notice, you do your best. I think he did. But, I mean, is he even really eligible for the contract at this point, or is Dana going to be a little bit upset about that? Meanwhile, I do wonder, for Baez, I wonder if there's a little bit of extra thanks, a little bit of extra gratitude with him, because last week we lost a fight. We went from 5 to 4. We could have had it happen this time, and Miguel said, no, I'll take the fight and let's do it. So give me your take on that. How do you think this big weight miss is going to impact that first fight?
The weight miss, that'll be interesting, especially if we have close calls, because let's be honest, a lot of these Contender Series shows, even ones without controversy, forget last week, even ones where we can all agree that it's not an easy decision to make. So you got to imagine when Dana's back there with the matchmakers and they have to split hairs, you got to imagine that's going to come up. But what kind of jumped off for me more on this, as far as contract related and their chances, John, is something with weight classes. We talked about it last week when we talked about a women's flyweight fight that was on the card, or I believe it was a strawweight fight actually. But I kind of hold this not just to the women, to even the gentlemen, maybe 155 and under. That's where you start to really see that statistics for finishes maybe start to take a bit of a dip.
Right.
So I'm looking at these guys' records, and I'm curious to see which versions we're going to get of them tonight with everything on the line.
Well, Miguel Baez does come in with an undefeated professional record, 6-0. He also comes in with a nickname that I know you're incredibly fond of, with Caramel Thunder. Gotta like that. Yeah. Let's throw the weight miss out of the equation. As you were looking at these two fighters, did anything stand out for either one that got you more excited, that got you to think this is probably the favorite tonight? I mean, what stood out to you that we could watch out of these two guys?
Well, to be honest, Carmel Thunder, I like it. He comes out of MMA. He comes out of MMA Masters, right? So he's a welterweight, but he's going to be getting those lighter bodies, like kind of spoke of, getting those lighter feels, being able to move around, but also it has some finishes and some wrestling in his background. But the curious thing is, I wonder how much he's going to go with that wrestling. And there are a couple other fighters here, which we'll talk about, that have some wrestling backgrounds to varying degrees. Again, we kind of planted those seeds on the top of this preview show here. Looking back to last week, will any of these guys be looking at that? Now, I think he's a better athlete overall, and of course he's not coming in at short notice. So I would be favoring him here. It's no secret. You look at the odds on this fight. I believe it's about a 3-1 difference each way. We've got Basil as about a 3-1 favorite, whereas Reyna, like again with the with the weight miss aside, he's coming in about like a 3-1 dog, depending on where you're looking at it. I think that's about right, though. To be fair.
Well, as you said, I think you can wrestle your way to a contract here. You just need to be incredibly aggressive once you get on top. I don't think you have to totally throw it out of the equation. Yep. So I agree. Listen, kudos to Reyna for stepping in. I hate to say this because I hate to rule out a guy already this early in the night when he hasn't even fought, but missing weight by that much, I just don't think that's going to stand well with Dana or the matchmakers, to be honest with you. So, all right, listen, let's get to our second fight because it's a fight that I think a lot of people are excited about. I guess I've got a little bit of personal interest in here, and we'll get to that in a second. A little Dallas, Texas, a little Fortis MMA in the equation, All right, we've got a new feature this week. If you tuned in last week, check this out. The UFC, being fantastic people that they are, giving us a little bit of the footage that is going to air during tonight's broadcast. So let's set up this package from Miles Johns and Richie Santiago.
I fight for a lot of things. I fight for my family. I fight for the town I come from. I am a UFC caliber fighter, and I do belong here. My name is Richie Santiago. I'm 26 years old, and I fight out of Triforce MMA. I work 40 hours a week at a refrigeration company. That's what I do during the day. I train at night. I train as much as I possibly can. I really just do it at the end of the day because I love it, and this is what I truly want to do. So I want to be able to quit my job and just do this. This is all I want to do. My fighting style is definitely, wrestling based, but I'm not afraid to bang. I'm not afraid to go out there and throw. Love to throw kicks, love to throw big punches, but my record speaks for itself. I get guys down and I choke them out. I plan on getting in there and finishing them. I've been working hard. I've been working my butt off to get here. This is the most motivated I've ever been, and I'm ready to just get in there and finish them as quick as I can. I love to finish, and I love to fight. Get to know my name, don't forget me, because I'm going to be here for a while.
I'm a husband, I'm a father of 2. I walked away from a college scholarship. I walked away from a job as a registered nurse because I want to fight MMA. This is my dream, this is what I want to do, this is what I know I need to do. My name is Miles Chapo Johns, I'm 25 years old, and I'm fighting out of Fortis MMA. I have 2 boys. Major is 2.5, and then I have another little son, Madden, and he's 6 months.
Go! Yeah!
They're definitely one of my reasons why. I wouldn't say I fight for my family, I fight for myself. This is who I am. But because I'm putting off a stable job, a job as a registered nurse, I know that I have to go all the way in. I know that in the 3rd round, if I'm beat up, bloody, whatever, for my family, I gotta go till I can't anymore. I gotta give it everything. My record is 8-0 with 4 finishes. I'm the LFA world champion and the #1 ranked Access TV fighter in the world. I'm going to knock him out. My coach always tells us Contender Series fight, be ready to go 3 rounds, but it's a 1-round fight.
All right, so it's bantamweight action. It's the Milford Mauler, Richie Santiago versus Miles Johns, fighting out of Fortis MMA, Dallas, Texas. One thing I can tell you about this fight, if for whatever reason you get bored by the fight action or you're not enjoying it, just make sure you're listening, because I'm sure you're going to be able to hear Saisud, the head coach, in this tiny little facility. He's going to be yelling at. He is one of the loudest, most enthusiastic, most direct, most intense cornermen in the game right now. But the results are showing. Dan, Tom, that Fortis MMA squad continues to put people in the UFC, continues to win on the regional level, continues to develop killers.
Oh yeah, I mean between Fortis MMA and maybe like Factory X, these are like more the new gyms if you've been paying attention. I don't want to say new because again, guys like Safe have been in the game for a minute. But as far as gyms kind of putting themselves on there, they're definitely a part of that. And Texas bias aside, this this is a two. If we're gonna stereotype places in the United States, let's just say that develop tough fighters. Texas and New England, man. If I'm a betting man, that's like minus 500. You're getting some tough hombres that come out of those two places. So I really like this matchup here.
Yeah, I do too. I think this is one a lot of people are pointing towards. Miles Johns comes in undefeated at 8-0. Santiago at 7-1. So two impressive professional records. As you said, my Dallas, Texas bias is awful. The same way you can't ask Dan Tom to legitimately break down a fighter from Hawaii, you can't ask me to break down somebody from Dallas. I'm going to be leaning towards him. But listen, I know a lot of people are high on Miles. As you were kind of doing your research on these fighters trying to make their way into the UFC, are you as high on him as I think a lot of people are? And do you feel like he's the favorite here?
I think he is the favorite. I mean, I know he's the favorite from the odds, but after researching and watching a little bit on them, I felt the same way. Now, it's interesting with Johns. He comes from a great camp. He is the more well-rounded fighter here, but he was the fighter, and actually this matchup is one I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about lighter guys. Obviously, these are bantamweights. Now, Santiago, man, he's a do-or-die fighter. I like him. He's a southpaw stylist. I like myself some southpaws, and he works at a high pace. So a do-or-die fighter that works at a high pace, I like that matchup for Johns because I think that's going to bring us out the best Johns. A lot of these guys are great fighters, like we saw Brendan Lanane after last week. But that doesn't necessarily get you a ticket to the show. So I actually like the dance partner here. I think the dance partner is very live, but I agree with who the favorite should be.
Yeah, and let's talk about that real quick. Bantamweights here. You said it. The statistics bear out. I hate the idea that flyweights don't have power, bantamweights don't have power. That's garbage. It happens. And of course, submissions are another way to end the fight where it doesn't matter if your power. Do you find it? You think it's more difficult for these guys to get these finishes? Should they change their strategy? That sort of thing. Do you think it's tougher to impress Dana knowing that the finishing percentages aren't necessarily what they are at heavyweight?
I think it is, especially when you look at, guys' level of competition. Now, I believe Santiago, anytime you get guys from the East Coast, you're usually going to see Ring of Combat or a lot of times CES, where I believe he has had a lot of his fights. Now, they have good matchmaking. There's good talent there, but when you look at it, he hasn't really been tested. There hasn't been guys with the strongest records. Now, there's not exactly names under Johns' resume per se, but if you look at the records, you're paying attention to that regional scene, he's had some pretty decent tests, and we've gotten to see more of who he is as a fighter. As you know, experience is a big thing. A lot of these guys that they pick for these are action fighters. They stack the deck. The UFC matchmakers, they know what they're doing, but let's be honest, even if a guy does have a couple of decisions, that's still not an end-all, be-all. A lot of these guys are still figuring themselves out, and it could be a tough ask to have to figure yourself out deep into a third round.
No question. Well, this is a feature fight I think a lot of people are looking forward to. Should say, by the way, our man Nolan King, he's heavy into the Contender Series, man. Yes. He loves this show. He loves the research on it. Miles Johns was definitely one of the people that he wants to watch out for. He said, keep your eyes on Miles Johns. He also said, keep your eyes on a man in the next fight, Kyle Dawkins, in the middleweight division. He faces Michael Lombardo in a 185-pound fight. Again, Kyle Dawkins comes as the Cage Fury Fighting Championships champ. He is an undefeated 6-0. Lombardo at an impressive 8-1 as well. As you break down this matchup, anything stand out to you about either one of these guys that we can keep an eye on, Dan?
I was kind of surprised. I thought maybe they would, side with Lombardo. He is the better athlete. This is a former footballer. So I was a little bit surprised there. But I think, the gambling public, the professionals out there, and even just, the general pop, I think they're kind of skeptical like me when you see a guy who's really athletic. He gets to finish early. But what happens with those later rounds? Now, to be fair, looking at both these guys, I've seen, both of these guys be able to get tired. But I'll actually side with the more technical guy here, who is actually being favored by the odds, which is Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle Dawkins. I think the thing that stands out to me, all right, 6-0, we said. All 6 wins by submission.
Yes.
I mean, 6 out of 6 finishes. You're looking for killers. You're looking for winners. That's right. By the way, just weapons to look for: 3 Darce chokes, 3 rear naked chokes.
Yeah.
So he definitely likes to attack the neck. When you see guys that have that type of submission, like the one thing that they go to or 2 things that they go to, as an opponent, are you looking out for those things specifically? I mean, is that what Lombardo needs to do, is like, hey, at all times I need to be thinking about the safety of my neck, or do you think that tends to screw people up in their game plans?
I think on paper, you're right, you should worry about it, but for a guy like Lombardo, I think it'll actually trip him up, John. Again, this is a guy that likes to come out there and get things done early. If those kind of guys think too much, it's usually not good. A more cerebral fighter, fighter, those are guys that maybe doesn't hurt them as much to think, but more of an explosive athlete type. If I'm a coach, I don't want that guy thinking too much. And just one other quick note on Kyle. He came from CFFC. That was another
fine organization, by the way.
Yes, great
fine organization.
That was the one I was reaching for when I'm mentioning. You're looking for those East Coast guys. You want to see the CFFCs on their resume, CES or Ring of Combats, any of those, all great organizations.
Yeah, joking, by the way. I do a little commentary for them from time to time. Me and CM Punk, we did the last show. So anyway, always give a shout out to CFFC.
Right.
All right, something else I want to touch on you with statistically here. We mentioned that weight classes sometimes have less finishes. The lower they go a little bit. But here's the other thing about these middleweights. Small cage in there. All right, but right back behind us, they kept the small cage. We saw that last week when this place was being built. We weren't sure because, again, we're in this brand new UFC Apex. It's a massive facility. They could put 10 of the big octagons in that side of that room behind us if they wanted to. Instead, they went with the small cage, and statistically, that impacts fights as well, right? Especially when you talk about these bigger divisions.
And mentioning something you said before, as far as, you asked me, what is it about a guy's specialty? And what I like about a guy like Kyle's specialty is, yes, they're all by submission. You don't really see the knockouts on there. But when you watch the tape on this guy's strike, he works at a high pace, John. And a high pace in the small cage forces guys to do things like shoot, which could put you into the dangerous front choke positions like the Bravo chokes that you just listed off there.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I like fighting in the small cage. It was funny because we took a tour of the facility. Even UFC President Dana White said that sometimes it's more exciting in the small cage, but they don't do it in the UFC. And by the way, if you've never noticed before, it's a 30-foot cage versus a 25-foot cage, and that may not seem like a lot of difference, 5 feet, but when you start talking about trigonometry, whatever the shape thing is. I don't remember what that is.
Mathematicians.
Yeah, it starts to make a very big difference in the total square area because you're taking it all the way around. So they just go with the bigger one on UFC events because they say it looks bigger in it looks nicer in the big arenas. It looks better on TV, so that's one of the reasons they do it. All right, so listen, not necessarily official picks here, but you said you feel like Dawkins is the rightful favorite here.
He's the deserved favorite. I mean, it's not too much crazy talk. I mean, when we're looking at all the odds, you're going to see at least a 2-to-1 spread, which is pretty high for MMA, as crazy of a sport it is. But I don't disagree. Now, again, if you're telling me that this fight ended in the first 30 seconds, though, I'm probably thinking Lombardo's name is the victor there. So we'll see.
Yeah, no question. All right, well then we'll move on to what is essentially our co-main event tonight. It is a featherweight matchup, and again, touching on these new resources that we've got from the UFC, we've got matchmaker Sean Shelby on tape, just giving you a little tease of what we're going to see with Zane and Justin Gonzalez.
Zane has packed a lot of experience in a short amount of time, and he's what I call a late bloomer. And over the last 2 years, he's strung together an 8-fight win streak. He's the type of guy that just throws power in every single punch. Justin Gonzalez, he's a fighter that's now 17-0, undefeated between his professional and amateur career. He's fought everybody. He's fought high-level competition. He's fought main events. The guy's truly battle-tested.
All right, so it is God's Warrior, Zane versus J-Train, Justin Gonzalez. Now, of course, this does involve a Hawaiian fighter, so we're going to expect some biases here, by the way. But let me just say, as I started to look at this, even when the fight was first announced, right, we're putting the thing together, and I'm like, Zane has a 12-7 record. What in God's name is he doing on the Contender Series? Are they that desperate for people right now? They're putting him with a 12-7 record. And then I started to kind of look into what he's done, and he's on an 8-fight winning streak. And to be honest with you, then I started to cheer for the guy a little bit. I love that when you see people that didn't necessarily start out with the stellar undefeated record, but they stayed with it. Maybe they weren't the blue chip prospect, but they continued working at it and getting better. And now he's on an 8-fight winning streak. And on top of that, out of the 12 wins, all 12 of them have come by stoppage. He has 9 submissions and 3 knockouts. So now, I'll be honest, I'm a little embarrassed. At first, I wonder what the heck is this guy doing on the show, and then now I'm kind of cheering for him a little bit. Meanwhile, he's facing the undefeated guy. Yes. So now you're kind of getting that little, the up and comer that had to grind versus the one that's got all the blue chip prospect. 9-0 for J-Train fighting out of Greeley, Colorado, but 5 decisions. He does have 3 knockouts and a submission, but it's gone to the distance 5 times. Not necessarily a bad thing, except, if we were just breaking down a fight. But when you're breaking down an opportunity to sit in one of those chairs right there and get Dana White to give you a contract, decisions maybe not what we're looking for. And
again, not to beat the narrative over the head as far as finishes and how those play out with the lighter weight classes, but these are things as we kind of, we're all reminded of the first episode of this season is something Dana's looking for. So we can't help but talk about these things. I know me and John here are a big fan of the lighter weight classes. Mm-hmm. It's no slight. But yeah, you're right. right, we are seeing a Hawaiian, not only Hawaiian, but a southpaw Hawaiian. You know I love my southpaws. And he's a fun southpaw, though, John. You know, he calls himself like a ninja styling, but really, he really puts his punch and kicks together. You can find finishes on the feet, but he can also find them on the floor. The problem, at least for him, has been historically his wrestling. Now you see his record you mentioned, and we're going to talk about a guy in the main event with another deceptive record. And you have to look for that because the experience, 12-7. But you look at the experience, you look at what he's done, and you could argue that it's a good thing for this stage, as opposed to a guy being rushed too fast. But I mentioned the wrestling because Gonzalez, I believe, he was a NCAA level wrestler. Okay, so I mean he's no slouch. A solid boxing acumen, and if I'm looking at it from a styles match, that's who I want to beat a southpaw with some submissions. You want to find the guy that can do both the striking and the wrestling. I think Gonzalez does that. But here's what the thing to watch out for from the Hawaiian. He is training at Black House. We've seen a lot of those Hawaiians make the trek over to Southern California, and you got Kenny Johnson over there. Shouts to Kenny Johnson, who's done
phenomenal.
Yeah,
coach,
I mean he was a wrestling coach to one Hawaiian named BJ Penn back in the day. So he's got good people around him. So we'll see.
No question. Well, listen, this fight, I wasn't really all that intrigued by it. Now I'm incredibly intrigued by it. You broke it down. Give me an idea. Is there one fighter that you're most looking to that you think has the best opportunity here, or is this a toss-up? Because I love the varying backgrounds they're coming with.
I'm going to be an optimist here. I think, first of all, I think the odds makers got it right for whatever that's worth. But I think more importantly, John, the matchmakers got this one right. Now, we can't speak too soon, but the reason why I say they got it right is because, let's be honest, the matchmakers can't control what happens in that octagon. All they can do is put the best matchup to produce the kind of fight they want on paper. I think they know what they're going for here. We mentioned sometimes Gonzalez might not get the finish all the time, but I think Zane's going to be a great dancing partner. I love the southpaw striker submission artist versus the pressure wrestle boxer. That just makes for a fun stylistic matchup. So hopefully they can find ways to shine here.
I'm down. All right. We got one last fight to talk about. Again, it's Dana White's Contender Series. It starts at the top of the hour. If you're in the U.S., it's going to be on ESPN Plus, so you got a few minutes to get signed up for that. If you're international anywhere else, it's going to be on UFC Fight Pass. You can watch it there. Hopefully, you've already got your subscription set up there. All right, let's talk about the surprise main event. And we've got another little quick piece of fancy video. We've got Mick Maynard, the other UFC matchmaker, a Australian now living in Texas, by the way, so I'll give him a shout out there. He's going to preview a little bit of Alton Cunningham versus Tony Johnson.
Alton comes to us from last year's Contender Series where he was actually fighting in middleweight. Since then, Alton has gone up to light heavyweight. All of his fights are by finish. I think the move to light heavyweight has done him well, so we're excited to have him. Tony comes to us straight out of AKA. He comes to us as a light heavyweight, although he's fought previously as a middleweight. Great stand-up, great knockout power. We're excited to have him.
All right, so kind of the surprise featured fight, right? Originally, it was second down. It got bumped up. Alton Cunningham, he's been on the Contender Series before. I was not at the weigh-ins yesterday. I was out in Los Angeles for a media day at UFC 239, but our videographer, cameraman extraordinaire, is actually back there producing behind the camera right now. He was telling us that Alton Cunningham, he showed me a little clip, before he stepped in to weigh in, was kind of running around the room, just shaking everybody's hand, talking about how happy he was to be back. It was great. Just a big dude running around in his underwear, shaking everybody's hand. It was fun to see, man. He's excited to be back. That was basically a year ago, July 10th, 2018. He was on the show, did not get selected for a contract. He has fought since. He's gone 2-0 with 2 finishes. Exactly what you want to do, right? That's what they say. Get more experience. Stay with it, right? Now he comes in with a 7-1 record. He's back. He's fighting against Tony Johnson, kind of the, I don't want to say a journeyman, because that almost has like such a negative connotation when you say it. I don't mean it like that. It's just a guy that's been around. A 12-year professional at this point. He has fought under the Bellator banner. He has fought under the Strikeforce banner. But, more when they're kind of booking those regional fights, than in real feature competition. So give me your thoughts on this matchup, because it is an exciting one. Like I said, these guys elevated to main event status, and again, light heavyweights in that small cage could be fireworks.
I teased it earlier when we were talking about deceptive experience, and both these guys have it. Obviously the only one loss on the professional record of Alton Cunningham kind of stands out because that's probably the most visible of all his fights. Of course, that was on the Contender Series, like John mentioned. But if you look at it, he's gotten finishes, TKO. He's got really nice kicks. He moves well and comes from a really good jiu-jitsu school, Pura Vida, BJJ. These Zach Ottos and other former UFC fighters of the world. We've seen guys come out of there as well. But the deceptive experience about him is you look at his amateur record. record, and I like this. Again, we mentioned that the 12-7 of Zane. You look at the win-to-loss ratio, and we can, even though in MMA it's not the same as boxing, we're still a bit fickle on the records.
Right.
But if you look at it, Alton Cunningham, I believe, is 5-5 as an amateur. Now that could be like, but I look at that, and I think that's great, especially coming into this kind of a format where we're seeing more, and not to be disrespectful, but more greener fighters kind of get brought into more of the younger stages of their career. I like seeing those amateur experience. I know the matchmakers are a big fan of that. That was an old Joe Silva staple. He always looked for those amateur records. Whereas obviously, on the other side, it's deceptive. You said, he's had a cup of coffee in Strikeforce. I watched his last fight in Bellator 83, of course, but what I like about why I was skipping the name here, Tony Johnson. There we go. I was getting confused with the other Tony Johnson that fought bare knuckle, the heavyweight, and then there's another Tony Johnson that'll actually come up first. There's a lot of Tony Johnsons, by the way.
You gotta be careful when you're doing your research that you're looking at the right guy.
But when I researched his more relevant stuff, I saw the cup of coffee in Strikeforce. That was almost a decade ago, so that really wasn't going to serve too well. Went back, watched him in Bellator 183, and I like it. He really only took about a round or so to get his timing. He was taking a lot of shots early. He'll get hit in the head. He might not check a leg kick here or there, but he's really composed. He almost has that veteran savvy. You can tell this guy's been in the gym more than his record reflects, and I really like that composure. He's got a really bomb for a right hand, and he does one thing I love, John, and that's work the body. I think that's going to be real good against a kicker to kind of disrupt that rhythm to get on the inside. I don't know if he's going to do it, but I think Tony Johnson, again, I don't want to abuse his phrase, but I think he's a really good dance partner here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight. By the way, shout out to Nolan King again, Alton Cunningham, a guy that he has on his list. I'm asking him every week to give me 2 or 3 guys that he's kind of most leaning on to get a contract, and he's leaning towards Alton Cunningham. So, all right, Tom, we talked about this whole card. We actually do have 5 fights this week instead of 4. We've got 1 extra. And this may sound silly, but it really does feel like there's a bit of a different energy in the building tonight, a little bit different energy in the air. And I got this sneaking suspicion that while we had a couple decisions, maybe some fights that we didn't love last week, I think we're in for something a little bit special. I mean, I know you like to deal more in realistic things than just kind of intangibles that I'm throwing out there with feelings and emotions. But when you look at these fights on paper, do you feel like we're going to get those finishes tonight? Do you feel like we're going to be seeing those killer moments that Dana White's looking for?
I think so. Again, for all the negative that you could say about how last week's went, you might not agree with who got the contracts. Everybody's tuning in this week, and you got to imagine the fighters are going to feel that. It's like, maybe a brutal example. It's like hanging your kill on the post for the village to see. You're sending the messages. I don't want to frame.
Poor Brendan Loughnane is being hung on the fence out there.
Yeah. I don't want to frame Dana White that way either. By the way, but I'm just saying, if we could take any silver lining from that, John, that controversy, if you will, is that it's really going to, like you said, it's really going to hyper inject a different feel. Again, it's not hyperbole. I agree with what you just said. We're already feeling it. We haven't even kicked off yet.
Yeah, I do. I hate to focus too much on the controversy, but to me the message was sent, and I think it was clear. And again, the thing I said about that I still go back to with Brendan Loughnane is I think he's going to end up in the UFC. This is an opportunity for Dana White to kind of put his hand on and say, you're my guy. You know what I mean? You're not just getting into the UFC. You're my guy. Or girl, of course, as well. You know what I mean? Right. You get to say that. And so I think he's looking for that, a special thing, a person that fits the mold that he has. The matchmakers are sitting on either side of Dana White. They have to respect the effort that Loughnane put in last week. And so I think he ends up in the UFC. I think, a short notice fight, something like that. We'll see. Should notice, by the way, you better enjoy tonight's episode. Unfortunately, dark next week. It's International Fight Week. So UFC 239, of course, MMA Junkie will have you covered for all of that. But I was kind of looking forward to having a Dana White's Contender Series. We're not going to have one next Tuesday. I know people are bummed. Simon Head is coming over from the UK. Our videographer from London, Abby Subban, will be here as well. I know they were both looking forward to checking out some fights. Not going to see it. So it's key that you check them out tonight. And last thoughts, over under contracts, give me an idea. What do you think? If you had to place a number on it, or just some names that you think are going to be in the UFC, Dan, Tom, rub that crystal ball and tell us what we're going to see tonight.
I think that earlier in the season to later in the season is dependent on how many contracts are being given out. If we see a lot of contracts early, maybe not so much late, but we are still early. And with the message sent, like you said, I think we're going to see everybody show up. I dare say I could see maybe all but maybe one fight even having a finish, which means I think if Dana White can giveth, he can take it away. But if he can take it away, he can also giveth. So I think Dana White compensates for last week, and we actually see a generous Dana White. If we see some finishes, we get a generous Dana White, maybe even 3 contracts, not just the normal 2.
He just feels guilted into it.
Yeah, maybe. You correct the steering wheel.
All right, well, stay tuned. Like I said, the fighters will literally be sitting on these chairs right behind us. This is the old kitchen, where they used to sell. Now, by the way, we picked up last time, they can actually hear the audio of UFC President Dana White talking about it. So as they're sitting in the chairs, as you're watching this unfold later on, understand that they are hearing that audio as well. So you're here. Before, they just kind of sat there in anticipation. Now that you can hear Dana either going, I love this guy, or this guy was no good, or this girl was no good. And it's a little bit tense as you watch it unfold. So anyway, like I said, top of the hour, I'm going to go get my position in there. You're going to run in there as well. Again, if you're in the U.S., it's on ESPN Plus, so make sure you get signed up for that. If not, if anywhere else in the world, it's going to be on UFC Fight Pass. It is Dana White's Contender Series, the thing we love to do on Tuesday nights here in Las Vegas during the summer. Stay tuned. Here's a little bit from each fighter as we roll into the show.
I think I've earned this contract because I'm sitting here 9-0, multiple finishes. There's very few that can even argue they've won a round against me.
I have a lot of passion and love and respect for martial arts, the sport. It's where I can open up in there and I can be myself. I'm a father of two. I've lived in my car. I'm still here. This is my dream. This is what I want.
Once I was able to find mixed martial arts, I found my calling right away. I knew that I was going to pursue this sport. Dana White, my time is now.
You are watching the world's most intense job interview. It's Dana White's Contender Series.
Future stars are vying for that UFC contract. They have a chance literally to change their lives forever.
After the long hours in the gym. After the years of grueling training.
What determination they have.
After a lifetime pursuing hopes and dreams. There comes the moment where a contender can make dreams come true. 100 fighters.
Welcome to the Contender Series. These fighters know what gets them to the big show.
10 nights.
One shot and it is over. Wow.
Oh, he's out.
That's it. Action-packed.
One shot to impress the boss and earn a UFC contract. This is Dana White's Contender Series.